is an MFA candidate in fiction at SFSU. She is the author of a little book called Transient Ways about hoboing in America, and has had prose published in several literary journals such as Mincer and the Tonopah Review. She is currently at work on a novel about seafaring hippies in the 1970s, which won the Clark Gross Award in the novel at SFSU. Please welcome Jessica.
Okay, so this is from the novel that I'm working on, and it's the beginning of it. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Talk loud though.
Dave woke at sunrise on his renovated World War II minesweeper, which was moored in the bay of a small island. If not for the laundry lines and an old Land Rover on the stern deck, Calliope would have looked as abandoned as the island or the half-sunk barge sticking out of the water close to the beach. Dave was alone in the old first officer's cabin. He just removed the wall between his room and the adjoining officer's mess hall, so his private space was now 100 square feet, pretty luxurious on a ship. He even had a private head, just big enough for a toilet bowl, a sink, and a shower head. Portholes let in the light, and he gazed at a red scarf draped across the stern torn screws of one of them, glowing like a lava lamp, reminding him of his ex. Now the room seemed too large, too empty. He rolled onto his side, facing a makeshift bedside table he pulled together out of a couple of fruit crates and a big piece of plywood. The twin bell alarm clock read 5:57, too early to get up, too awake to stay under cover. A beaten copy of the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin lay within reach, and just beyond it was a turn-of-the-century tract titled, "We Shall Have a Motor Car." He was tempted to pass the next 20 minutes reading, then sally into the morning with a certain calming of his mind. He reached over a pile of change and a bouquet of keys for his wire-framed glasses. Scratching his chin through a thick beard, he got up, totally naked except for glasses. He grabbed the overhead pipes and hung like a long, skinny monkey, doing a few pull-ups, then stood with feet apart, rotating his arms. A small wall mirror reflected his face, a thick, shaggy beard contrasting with a high forehead and a hairless chest. Today was going to be a good day, he just knew it. Finally, visitors. Life was quiet here. Even his 28th birthday had passed with barely a celebration. He pulled on a stinky pair of pants, clutching the pockets full of nuts, washers, and seashells, and sniffed the shirt before donning it. Underneath his bed was a woven pair of huaraches, which he slipped on. Someone was cooking. He could smell onions and sizzling oil coming through the cracks in the old pass-through between the officers' mess hall and the crew's mess hall. It was time to read the day. Sunlight sparkled on the turquoise water of the bay. Robinson Key was a short swim away, its beach littered with rusty pieces of scrap metal. There wasn't another soul in sight, just roofs from the abandoned shipyard peeking through the trees. Dave bathed his face in the sunshine, cresting over the mangroves, and listened to the warbling cry of shearwaters. He could definitely smell onions frying in the galley now, and hear low voices in the mess hall, but he walked in the opposite direction. The stern deck was a working area, and he threaded his way between tools, lumber, welding supplies, block and tackle, conch shells, rusty portholes pulled from a wreck, and a pair of flip-flops swished under a pile of hawser line. He went as far back as he could and hissed behind the ship, leaning against a steel davit. Birds were singing and palm fronds rustled, and above was blue sky. Since the visitors were sailors, the weather couldn't be better for their arrival. He couldn't help but wonder about these new people who were coming. You never knew what someone did to get by for a living down here. The people who lived in British Honduras were as varied as chocolates in a Valentine's box. The thought of sweets made him salivate, bringing back the idea of breakfast, so he zipped up and walked across the deck. This is the second section. Pat woke in the claustrophobic room inside her sailboat, with her boyfriend snoring on one side and her daughter's dirty feet pressing her thigh. A A motorboat gunned by, its weight rocking the sailboat, and Pat's stomach lurched. She wiped the sleep from her eyes and stifled a cough and squatted over an old coffee can. Taking care not to wake her boyfriend or daughter, she wriggled into some cutoffs and a striped tank top and brushed her long, bushy blonde hair until she heard static. Clamping an unlit cigarette between her teeth, she crawled topside, gripping her can. Belize City buzzed with activity, but Haulover Creek was a quiet, greenish river, and dew sparkled on the cluster of sailboats moored to freestanding pilings beside the marketplace, a covered building that was open-sided along the river so farmers and fishermen could unload their sailboats and barges. She could smell diesel exhaust from a Bedford truck rattling over the swing bridge. She was where the river met the bay, at the busiest intersection in the whole city. All the fishermen's sailboats were moored here. Side by side, 6 deep and 10 to 15 in a row. Pat would have to literally hop across the boats to get to the market, but everyone did that. She walked to the bow, making sure nobody had stolen the portable oven she bought from the market. The small, shiny metal box was still there in the fish hold. The Mennonite farmer who had sworn it could be placed on top of any Coleman camping stove, but now she wondered what she baked. She wasn't into cooking elaborate meals, but her daughter had pleaded that she buy it and bake her cakes. Morning, Mama, came a deep voice a few boats over. Pat cupped her hand around a match and nodded at a fisherman in overalls with his early morning catch of torpedo-shaped barracuda. She recognized him, his eyes set in black skin, wrinkled by age and sunshine, but she didn't know his name. Good morning. Looks like you've had a great one so far. She bit her cigarette and tipped the coffee can over the brown water. It was early enough that no stink had risen. The piss in the coffee can splashed, and catfish rose from the depths. That was one fish she would never eat around here. She glanced at the fishermen and thought barracuda were second on her list for no better reason than they had too many sharp teeth. Her goal was to grab a cup of coffee to fix her aching head and be back in a jiffy. Last night she was at Chicago Slim's bar, sitting on the rickety porch overlooking the river. He had given her one too many free drinks as a welcome back from her trip to Canada, and she couldn't turn down his hospitality. She jumped the gap between her and her neighbor's boat, still smoking her cigarette. Mama, came a soft voice. A 4.5-year-old girl peeked out of the stern of Pat's sailboat, scratching her puffy blonde afro. Where are you going? Hey, Doobie Ducks, you're up. I'm going to get coffee. At a restaurant, the girl arched her eyebrows. Yes, Wendy. Wendy scrambled onto the deck in her underpants, then ran back to grab a dress and fight her way into it as she wobbled across the deck. I want fried jacks or an omelet. How about some guava jelly with our toast? Anything but my cooking. Pat grabbed Wendy's hand as they entered the marketplace. Vendors were setting up their stalls, organizing baskets of soursop, mammy apples, and greenish-brown oranges into colorful, fragrant pyramids. Farmers arranged vegetables and tubers on tables, and fishmongers laid fish on metal slabs. Wendy pinched her nose and skipped over slushy piles of bloody ice, running ahead to some baked treats before circling back, asking, what are we doing today? We've sold all our coconuts. Pat shook her head. I told you, Doobie Ducks, we're going to meet one of Robert's friends who owns a big ship. Robert was an American expat who used to live on Cape Cocker, the same island Pat and Wendy had called home for almost a year. Wendy's gaze followed a tray of coconut cake a woman carried. Mom, can I have one of those? They joined the flow on the swing bridge. A man tried to touch Wendy's hair, but she swatted it and scowled. A woman waddled in front, pushing a cart of peeled oranges dipped in hot pepper salt. The woman looked down, saying, how are you keeping, little sister? You need an orange? Thank you, not now, Pat said, scooting Wendy along. The girl kept jabbering. We should definitely bring some cake. I'm thinking banana cake. Everyone likes cake. Like you? Not just me, I'm talking about everyone. Cake and ice cream. But I think ice cream would melt. That's too bad, isn't it? Pat stuck out her tongue. No ice cream, yuck. Wendy frowned. There's something wrong with you if you don't like ice cream. Honey, there's a lot of things I don't like. Wendy listed the things she didn't like to eat: poached eggs, canned tomato sauce, pig's tails, ceviche, lobster. By the time they reached the restaurant, which was the bottom level of a triangular-shaped building, the smell of sautéed onions and fried dough came through the open door, and a scattering of travelers and locals sat at the table, shoveling in rice and beans and eggs, washing it down with coffee. A squat white woman in her late 50s, known to everyone as Mom, was sitting like a big toad on a bar stool at the door, saying, "Good morning." Mom was a fixture of Belize City since the 1960s, when she sailed with her son down the west coast from California in a trimaran. Pat had heard the two argue so much after going through the Panama Canal, Mom's son threatened to abandon her in Belize City. They ended up here together, she running the restaurant, and he building a private wharf up all over creek. "Well, look what the cat dragged in," Mom said, smiling. She reached out to pat Wendy's poofy hair, but the girl swooped away. "No cat dragged me in," Wendy replied. "Well, that's good, or I might not let you in." Mom turned to Pat. "Good morning, Patricia. I thought maybe you'd left for good." "Oh, we just visited Julian's family in Toronto, a bunch of racist squares." Mom went and climbed off her chair. "Where is Julian?" "He's sleeping in our boat," Pat replied, following Mom to a table by an open window. A trio of construction workers sat at a table, one of them sucking his front teeth and looking Pat up and down. He complimented the food. "You should tell the cook, not me," Mom barked. Wendy diddled with a bottle of Marie Sharp's hot sauce till Mom took it away and in the same gesture pointed it like a gun at the only waitress. "Why is this table still a mess, Donatia? Nobody wants to be eaten off of someone else's ketchup smears." "We're going to visit a ship today," Wendy said. Mom leaned heavily on a spare chair, watching the waitress wipe down the table. "Whose ship are you visiting?" "Well, it's moored at some abandoned shipyard I've never been to, Robinson Point," Pat said. "I've never met the captain." Mom's face brightened. "You must mean Dave." Just about every expat came through a restaurant. It was the best place to rendezvous in town. "That's his name. My friend Robert lives on the ship now." Mom rolled her eyes. "I know Robert, and I know Dave. I know all of y'all. I even know what that loony who sells seaweed drinks looks like underneath that goddamn bucket he wears on his head." She flip-flopped away, cackling as she climbed back onto her bar stool. "Dave's good people." Pat sipped coffee and smoked a cigarette, watching Wendy chow down on a cheese omelet. She wondered what she might bring as a gift for the ship, and what she needed to bring back home. She also needed to stop at the post office so Wendy could mail a drawing to her dad in New York. "Mama, shouldn't I get some guava jelly to go with my toast?" "Everyone needs guava jelly with their toast." And this is the last section. Dave was inside the pilot house when he saw the visitors, and he grabbed a pair of binoculars off a hook on the wall. A man and a woman navigated a sailboat, the woman at the prow, probably calling to her partner about the color of the water, marking where the shoals were, while he manipulated the tiller. The sailboat looked like a local fishing boat with a mainsail and a jib, and a centerboard that could lift in shallow water. Dave adjusted the binoculars. Amazed, he saw a kid playing in a large square hole, the old fish box set in the bow. He couldn't pull the binoculars off his face, and the term "peeping Tom" came to mind. He ought to go out on deck and call hello, but there was something exciting and taboo about spying on them as they sailed in. In the background, the DJ on Radio Belize chattered, "Eat at Mom's restaurant for the best red beans and rice in town." One hand left the binoculars and felt along the wall, stopping at a shirt on a hook. Seeing the kid made Dave want to change his clothes. Kids loved costumes, and so did he. He tried to keep looking through the binoculars while pulling on a tan-colored vintage captain's shirt, but they got caught in the neck hole. "Shit," he said, pulling the fabric taut across his skinny chest. He straightened the ratty golden epaulets, licked his palms and smoothed his hair, and adjusted the binoculars again. Julian pushed the tiller towards the sails, and the sailboat's bow sliced through the water. Pat jumped to reset the sail, freeing the jib, and then sheeted it in. She planted her feet apart and pulled the corner of her eye. "Robert said some hippies on a boat, but I am impressed." "Mm-hmm." Julian snorted. "I'm sure that's what all the ladies say." Pat manned the ropes, ready to jibe. The boom swung over the cockpit. Robert said the captain is a real adventurer. That ship looks broken down. But Pat knew sailboats, not ships. Still, she could tell it was an American Navy ship from World War II. Julian was right. It didn't look serviceable. Gray paint peeled on its wooden hull, and the deck was cluttered with junk. Pat turned to her daughter, who was wagging her butt at the ship, mooning it. "Wendy, what are you doing? You're such a little goose. A goose maloose." Wendy stuck out her tongue. "I'm not a goose, I'm a duck." Julian began coiling rope onto his arm. "Would you control your daughter?" He looked away, shaking his head. "You're so uptight. Loosen up." Pat threw a mango at him, but he ducked, and it plopped into the water. Dave thought the girl was adorable. She was naked, lean, except for a kid's pot belly, and she had a golden afro. She had to be half black, but the man and the woman looked white as could be, blonde and blue-eyed to boot. He wondered who the girl's biological parent was, and he focused on the woman, noticing she and the kid had the same fierce squint and furrowed brow. He could bet that the girl's father was someplace else. The kid scurried to the hole in the bow, disappearing from sight, then pow, jumped up like a flying fish, arms wheeling. What a hand! What issue of Mother Earth magazine had they all stepped out of? The adults were tan, rangy, and had hair like lion's manes. They worked like a team. Dave hadn't been able to teach his ex a thing about boats. These were the visitors from Cape Hawker, he thought, adjusting the binoculars one more time. Nobody chanced upon Robinson Point. The scrap iron scattered across the island put off the hippies, and the locals were spooked by the abandoned buildings. Pat read Calliope on the minesweeper's wooden hull, and the closer they approached, the more she smiled. The ship was 6 times longer than her sailboat, and its main deck was 10 feet above the water surface. The pilot house was 2 stories up, and its main deck was 10 feet above the water surface. The ship also had aspects of home, laundry swinging in the breeze on the back deck, and a green-eyed cat peeking out of a porthole. Her excitement rose. The possibility of a different lifestyle intrigued her. Music came from the galley, a Beatles song that was rarely played on radio bullies. Pat grabbed Wendy's hands and swung them. "In the town where I was born." She twirled and dipped, loving Wendy's squealing laughter. Dave felt mesmerized by the woman dancing with her kid, almost feeling the same joy until she looked up, spying him, and waved. He stepped back, bumping into the wheel. What if she thought he was some creepy peeping Tom? He went outside and waved, his heart thumping. Everything was fuzzy as he wiped his glasses on the hem of his shirt. Even with blurry vision, he saw the kid popping up and down, pointing. His cheeks flushed. Sound carried over water, and the girl was yelling about banana cake. He climbed down the starboard ladder to the deck to let everyone know the guests had arrived, but they had to have already heard that kid.